The Big Ten will keep divisions for the 2023 season, and then will reorganize when USC and UCLA show up in 2024. Scott, how much discussion was there of maybe going divisionless after this year? Pac-12's already done that, even though they still have a division-created schedule. ACC is going divisionless next year. What discussion was that?
Yeah, it was significant, and it started as early as when USC and UCLA were voted into joining the Big Ten, and even before that, there was a lot of discussion about going divisionless once the divisions were cast out by the NCAA as a rule for and which is what the ACC did and the Pac-12 did, and so that really started back then. But what kind of came to this crux was a couple of things. One, the Big Ten has still got kind of reeling a little bit from legends and leaders, the names, of course, and then also the fact that it only lasted 3 years. Geography has lasted 9, and you're going to add UCLA and USC in 2 more years. So it's like, do you really want to have another structure for 1 year as an interim for another one? This is kind of a historic league that doesn't like to change things very often anyway. So they thought, well, why don't we bring that back? But then there's also a lot of reasons, because a lot of people are scoffing, going, man, the East is so top heavy. And this year is the greatest of that disparity, no question. But then you also look at, but if you go with a single conference format, you might lose a Michigan-Penn State game. And that's the 5th highest rated game right now in college football, and 2nd among Big Ten teams, and in 1st when it comes to simply league games. You're going to also have new media rights agreements coming up next year. So you want to make sure that NBC has decent primetime games, and that's probably going to be one of them, or close to it, or it'll land on Fox. But if nothing else, in the West, you get some good rivalry games, and then to top it off, you're going to get at least another divisional race. I mean, we look at this year at Purdue, Illinois is probably going to be for the championship of the West, and that's November 12th. Right now, if it was a single division format, it would be for 4th place probably in the Big Ten. Now it at least has, hey, something's at stake, and people will watch because of that. So that's really kind of where they're at. 1 more year of this. Probably one last chance for a few teams in the West to actually have a shot at a championship game, and then they'll just wipe the slate clean and go into something different. How many
coaches in the Big Ten West popped champagne with their shirts off today?
Well, I can think one in Champaign that popped his shirt off anyway, but
we've all seen that picture.
Yeah, but he probably had a can of Schlitz, because it's more like Schlitz, Illinois, rather than Champaign. Yeah, I mean, really, well, you don't know, because what's going to happen in Wisconsin and Nebraska, and who knows at maybe another school, there might be some changes going on. So, it does help them, because they at least feel like they can win a West Division title. But what I want to also do is look back at what was it like when it was 11 teams before divisions happened. And in the Big Ten, it was pretty. I mean, Wisconsin would have been in that championship discussion. Iowa would have been in that championship discussion quite a bit.
Michigan
figured
State
Nebraska
was starting to get good under D'Antonio,
right? So Nebraska, once they get the right coach in there, they're going to be part of that discussion. Michigan is now back, but from the end of the Lloyd Carr era until the last couple of years, Michigan wasn't automatically rubber stamped them as the number 2. Penn State has kind of been in that discussion. So it was really, up until the last 2 years, it's been Ohio State, a group of about 5 teams, and then everybody else. And now it's more Ohio State, Michigan, kind of the way it was 2006 and before.
So let me ask you this, Scott. When is the next year? So when they move to this inevitably, and maybe USC and UCLA join, you can even add them into the equation. When will be the first year? Gun to your head, final moments. It's high stakes. Gun to the head. You got to get it. When is the first time a former Big Ten West team will finish in the top 2 in the conference? Year-wise.
2026.
Oh. That is a lot sooner than I thought you would say.
Highly specific.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was very specific.
Jim Leonard's Badgers.
Yeah, it could be Jim Leonard's Badgers. It could be Lance Leipold's Cornhuskers. I don't know who's going to end up there. Could be Burt Bielema, and maybe
At which school?
yeah, in Illinois or Iowa.
Oh, you said it. You can't say that
You
word.
can't say the word, Scott.
I blew it already. God, I'm only like 5 minutes in too, or something. So anyway, yeah, it could be something like that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan every single year.
If you say the word again, you're going to have to eat the death chip.
What is that like?
Cottage cheese on top.
Is that mayonnaise or what?
You got to pay $28 worth of Taco Bell. But one of the things in that meal is a death chip, and your dessert is cottage cheese instead of donut holes. If you say that word again.
All right.
Could you imagine if we took all of our challenges and put it into one thing?
So it would be a death chip covered in cottage cheese and mayonnaise, surrounded by $28 worth of Taco Bell.
Yeah. And then you've got to chug a dark beer afterwards.
You got to chug a Guinness to wash it down. The Guinness it might actually help wash it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, right. that is going to be.
I guess it'll just all depend on scheduling, right? Like who is able to, bob and weave and get to the end of the place without having to. I mean, like I think that I would go like 2035 with the way that
there's anywhere to hide though, because you're getting everybody to. I would assume they're going to go with something similar to what the SEC is probably headed toward, which is a 9-game conference schedule with 3 permanent rivals, and then everybody rotates through twice every 4 years. It's really hard to hide at that point.
Yeah, I mean, again, we got to look before 2021. I mean, Michigan wasn't just what it is today. Wisconsin was pretty freaking good earlier. I mean, they were undefeated in 2017. There was another team in 2015 that was undefeated in the regular season. You've got opportunities there that to get to that. It's not just going to be this rubber stamp Ohio State, Michigan, situation.
So maybe I'm biased, but I want to ask you this, Scott. Of all the teams that made the Big Ten championship game in the East-West era from the West Division, how many of them do you think still would have made the championship game if they started the year off in the East?
4. I think
there's specific.
Yeah, I've looked at this before because you look at the East-West divide going into this year. The East led the West only 77-70 in actual games, in regular season games. Ohio State was 18-2, and we all remember the 2 that they got blitzed at West venues, Purdue and another team. So
there it is.
There you go.
So you remember those, but Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, and one other team in the West all had real comparable records against one another. Penn State had lost a couple to one team. Michigan had lost significantly to Wisconsin a few times. I mean, blowouts. In 15, one team didn't have a loss, and that was the only team, and that was a Western team. Same thing in 17. Now they lost to East Division teams, but they were pretty competitive, close games. One of which took a 22-play drive. So, I think that we make a big deal of it because of the name recognition, the recruiting rankings, the money. But Penn State, Wisconsin was a very close game in 16.
2015, though, if school that shall not be named had to play not a West schedule, but all the Big Ten, just sort of you get who you get schedule, there's a better chance it would have gotten Ohio State, which maybe they win that game, but probably they don't. And, but maybe they don't get them. Mm-hmm. So it is possible. I'm very curious. I want to.
But you're adding in 2 extra teams now, and I don't know where you put UCLA in the mix here. Mm-hmm. But you're adding 2 extra teams that I think you could maybe say are further down the line.
We got a question from Taleni. Which division will USC and UCLA be in when they go to the Big Ten? I'm not sure everybody understands this.
No,
there will be no divisions. It will just be you play 3 fixed opponents a year, and then everybody else twice every 4 years.
That is the biggest remaining disagreement is how many protected foes will you get. The SEC is much smarter with this. It's either 1-8 or 1-7 or whatever.
Oh, no. 1-8 is not smart. Like fire everyone involved.
No, what I mean is
1-8.
there are two methods that they're arguing. The
Right.
Big Ten, it's 3. Is it 2? Is it 1? Is it 0? Well, I expect it to be 2 or 3 because, Michigan's not going to go a year and say, yeah, we're not going to play Michigan State this year. I mean, there's, so they're going to want to have 2. There are really about 10 games that should be protected, but 3 of which belong to one team. They face Nebraska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin every year. But then you have Penn State, which has said, we don't have anybody we want to protect. So there's this, we'd rather cycle through everybody.
I bet they don't.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But the math only works with 3.
Right. Because otherwise you're
clean rotation otherwise.
Exactly. And that's what the discussion is. And what I've had discussions with them, and I've written this before, is, well, if you go 3-6-6 and out of that, what would it be? 21 games that get protected, I think it is. 24 games that will be protected over a 4-year block, 10 of which you could deem as like in red, permanent. They're not moving. Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois, Northwestern, all those games. Then the other 14 you could cycle through.
That's the second one you picked, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Purdue, Indiana.
Well, Scott, you actually should do a story that ranks the best and most important protected games in order of importance.
I certainly could. I
would read the hell out of that.
I did one a couple weeks ago where I did like here's the 3 protected rivals for everybody, 10 of which were in red, and then there are 14 that could cycle through. Like maybe they decide, what, let's have Ohio State and USC play 4 straight years. And then after the end of the 4-year block, they'll say, well, let's make it Penn State USC or something like that.
This is very smart. And after hearing the SEC people argue about this for more than a year at this point, like that's how you need to approach it. It's not, we keep using the word permanent. Maybe that's our fault. It's not permanent.
Yeah.
You can shuffle it around. Like we said, Michigan, Ohio State, you will always play. Auburn, Alabama will always play. But
yeah,
you can change up other things and it's okay.
There's this weird line between making things fair and equitable, but also not wanting to go years without most important games. And we had a comment in the chat here. I'm trying to find it. It's hard to see. Oh no, 2-2-4. It's hard to see the Big Ten adding USC and not having them play Ohio State every year. It's like it's not fair to Ohio State or USC if you make that a protected game. But it's also like if they add that, when they add that team, if they don't play Ohio State in a year, it's like, what are we doing? It's like you just got done saying that Penn State doesn't have anybody that they want to protect. Yeah. Like a year in the Big Ten without Penn State playing Michigan and Ohio State is a worse year than what we have right now. And the entire point of expansion, I guess, right, is to chase the television dollars and to create the best possible matchups that you possibly can. And I feel like if you were to lose those games and like Purdue plays Penn State one year instead of Ohio State playing Penn State, and the product is worse. And I know people will still watch it, but it's just like, wait, there's so much product here.
Well, exactly.
There has to be a way to parse through it the smartest possible way. And you know what? The Big Ten, as far as I'm concerned, hasn't been concerned about being equitable on the field or fair. And if they were, then the divisions would look different. So
if you play playoff, it's not as bad because you might be putting Penn State at a competitive disadvantage, forcing them to play Iowa and Michigan. Well, I just said the I word.
You bastard!
When I didn't even mean, I meant Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm the only person that's going to
play Ohio State and Michigan every year is definitely not competitively equitable. But you don't have to win the league to get in the playoff. I mean, you really need to be the 3rd or 4th best team to get in the playoff.
Which means that the thing should be schedule the best games. It's like if it were me, I would make sure. And like I don't know where Michigan State, like what games that they want to protect. They want to protect Michigan, obviously, right? But does Michigan State have an interest in protecting the Ohio State game? Doesn't seem like they probably would,
the last
right?
Couple of years.
But, so I'm saying, like, if you have USC joining the conference, I would want to watch Ohio State play USC every single year. That's the best possible game you can make with the expansion.
Right. And then there's also, USC, do you want to have them play Michigan or Penn State or Wisconsin? There's that, those games that track, Andy, I think you wrote about it a little over a year ago, those $4 million viewer games.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the games that you bring in with USC. All of
the ones you just mentioned are over 4 million viewers.
Right. And that is the crux of why, and I don't know why people can't get this through their heads. There will not be divisions because they don't want to see USC go to Northwestern and not Ohio State. They want USC to go to, if they're going to go to anybody in the West, it'll be USC, Nebraska, another team that has a really good home environment, or go out to Michigan and Penn State. And, those are the games that matter. Those are the games that you're going to hear or on Fox or NBC.
I mean, but think about how many great games we've gotten just because of how lopsided the divisions are. Like over the course of the past 7 years, how awesome the Big Ten East games are. Every single year when you have the Ohio State Penn State game and the Michigan Penn State game,
but you're still
Michigan State was good, and you will. But it breaks my heart to hear that those East teams don't want to protect the games that really have been holding up the conference's viewership for the past decade. And I know there's other teams like Wisconsin and that
whether they want it or not doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything.
No, I know. I'm saying like in general, like if the thought is that they're not protected and we lose even 2 of those in a given year and replace them with a team that, if you play Northwestern instead of another Big Ten East team, it just kind of sucks. So like as a fan of the sport, I want to see as many good games as possible. And I think that they're on the right track by eliminating divisions in order to try to manifest that as best as they can.